section in my book, which I told you, that and not only me, there are a couple of other scientists also who have argued in the same way, that WHO definition of health is possibly the reason why pharmaceutical domination has come today on care. What is, just quickly look at the definition. Definition of WHO is, health is a state of well-being and not merely absence of disease or infirmity. Now, if you analyze this in section, first of all, health, they are talking about health is a state of complete. Are you able to understand what complete is? Can anyone say what is complete? There cannot be any complete health because none of us is healthy at any given point of time. They are saying state of complete, physical. To some extent, yes, physical I can buy. Mental, which modern science don't understand. Social. At three levels, if there is well-being, now I will ask you a question, what is well-being? There is no unanimously accepted definition of well-being. Well-being can be perceived by different people differently. So you are talking first part in the definition, which is very vague, which you cannot define, which you don't know. And what is the second part? It is not merely absence of disease. So they are saying that health is not absence of disease. Now disease is something which you can measure. You know what disease is. And there is a principle in management that you are able to measure only that what you can measure. In management, if you are measuring performance of a person, then only you can manage. Or performance of industry, then only you can. But if you don't know what it is, you are not able to manage. It's a simple principle, not only in management, in our life also. So you, in the definition, you are trying to do something related to absence of disease, which you know. You can definitely tell that there is absence of diabetes in you or not. You can definitely tell there is absence of hypertension in you or not. You can definitely tell there is absence of asthma in you or not. So the whole focus went on diseases. As a scientist, I can tell you that it is extremely difficult for me to get the research funding to work on health. But it is very easy for me to get funding to work on diseases. I may like to work on health, but I may not get funding. Funding will be available to me if I want to work on diabetes, cancer, hypertension, but not on health. Because the focus, unfortunately, has gone on health, and probably that has gone because of this kind of a half-part vague, half-part unclear, and only in this definition understandable part is disease and infirmity, not other. So WHO definition is far from complete, and actually people have challenged this definition because the fourth important state they are missing in this, which you would know much better than all of the world, I would say, and that is the spiritual dimension. And WHO now, actually, there is a pressure on WHO. There are already task force recommendations they have gone to WHO to include word spiritual in the definition of health. So, physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being. That's what they are contemplating. Now, what causes health? If this question is asked, there are only 4 factors which determine whether an individual or a community will be healthy or not. And if you are able to control these 4 factors, you are able to control your health. Which are these 4 factors? Actually, these factors, out of these 4, they are like pillars of any house. 4 pillars, strong 4 pillars of the house. If these pillars are strong, your house is strong, the roof is intact, you are protected. Now what happens is, I'm not going to spend time on that, so when any of the 4 pillars become weak, you need a support system. In a house, if one pillar is weak, obviously you will go and give some support. That support system is medical care. So we consider medical care as a 5th and indirect determinant of health. But the direct determinant of health is our nutrition, lifestyle, environment and heredity. You can add, anyone can add the fifth dimension if you can. There are only four major determinants of it. Each one can have subsets. Like lifestyle can have behavior as a subset. Or nutrition can have diet as a subset. So many. But out of these four, look at this, nutrition, totally in your hand. You can decide whether to go in for good nutrition or bad nutrition. And health directly depends on your nutrition. Diabetes is one of the major disease which has emerged because of bad nutrition and bad lifestyle. Environment is something which is given. So if we are able to protect it, that is better. But we can't do. You are lucky that you are staying in such a healthy environment. In Pune, we are polluted, surrounded by all smoke and all gases and all toxins. We hardly can do anything about it. So people are going to suffer with asthma and other conditions. And the last one is not in our control, but we can prevent. That is heredity. So when these fail, medical care is important. Today, medical care has become important because all that which is in our hand, we are not taking control of that and we are becoming passive, hoping that somebody else from outside will come and give us help. We must remember that doctors did not control diseases like cholera, typhoid in the West, but the nutritious food, safe drinking water and pasteurized milk did it for them. Immunization is responsible for wiping off smallpox or control diseases like diphtheria, tetanus and polio, not antibiotics. Almost 50% of the diseases we have are related to environmental reasons today, and remaining 50% actually are related to lifestyle, nutrition, and a small proportion is also responsible for genetic disorders. So I'm going to again skip some of the slides. So understanding of well-being has been, there is a major initiative taken by Lancet, and most surprisingly, the countries which carry rich traditional knowledge, they are losing that, they are becoming more modern, and most of the modern countries are now going after traditions. And they have to withdraw. Now statins are being challenged. Doctors have actually reduced prescribing statins for cholesterol control. And there was very good article published by British Medical Journal just last week, last year. I may have a photo of that in this presentation later. And the title of that article was, "Eating apple a day will keep you away from statins." Just eating apple. Apple is represented, for example. It need not be apple. No. It could be any good food. But good food is good enough and it can really keep you away from this cholesterol problem. There are many reasons actually for this possible crisis in healthcare, which we call it as medicalization of the society, or dominance of pharmaceutical industry, or dominance of modern medicine, synthetic medicine on us, on our minds. That has been bombarded one after the other, and now we are convinced that we cannot live without medicines. Medicines meaning modern medicines, synthetic medicines, and these medicines. Few of the reasons I have put it, which I could think of. One of the reasons is there has been poor dialogue between East and West, and between philosophy and science. One of the major mistakes which we did in the past was separating philosophy from science. Poor dialogue between East and West. I will give you one example. Again, this is based on our own experience in lab. I am not going to give that experience here. But we get students from botany and we send them out for field work and tell them that you have 1 week. And in 1 week, you have to get some material from the forest which you think is medicine. And then we will study that material in laboratory to see what it is, what it contains and all. And in majority of the cases, you will find that students will not either they will not come with anything because they don't know how to identify what is medicinal, or if at all they bring in something, what they bring in will be poisonous, because it is easy to identify poisonous characteristics of material than medicinal properties. You smell something, you faint. You eat something, you have diarrhea. And then you will see that, you will feel that, oh, this is something different, you know. Let's take it back to laboratory study. Same thing happened in Europe, where all these drugs were produced. Remember what drugs we have today in modern medicine store, 60% of them have origins in plants. Medicinal. 60%, even today I know, 60% of them have origin in plants. But the plants which they selected in Europe were based on knowledge, what we call it as little traditions or small experiences. And as I told you, small experiences will give you knowledge about poisons and not of medicine. So the plants which were selected in Europe for medicinal purposes, almost all of them were poisonous. And I will give a few names, and there are many: quinine, colchicine, belladonna. All these are not really truly medicinal plants. They are used in homeopathy because they are toxic. But they used it for doing drug research, and many new drugs came out, but the original toxicity continued. And so modern medicines, pure modern medicines, started showing this kind of toxicity. In Europe, there was technology to develop new drugs, but there was no know-how of selecting proper material for developing. That know-how was available in the East, but in the East, there was no technology. In the East, you had all the knowledge about Tibetan medicine, which are the medicinal plants, what do they contain, for what purpose they use, or Ayurveda gives in Charak Samhita a list of these plants. But from where medicines were created in India? There was no technology. So, poor dialogue between East and West, confusion between health and medicine, overemphasis on disease, illness and sickness, and approach of modern science is reduction. We think that we can divide complex things into small parts and studying deep each part. That is important. But that reductionist approach in biology doesn't work. Biology is not mathematics where 2 plus 2 is 4. In biology or in medicine, 2 plus 2 can be 10, 200, or 2 plus 2 can be 0 also. So this kind of understanding cannot come in reductionist biomedicine. And so now all over the world, new discipline has emerged called systems biology. And I'm going to show you one chart of systems biology. Systems biology actually says that you need to take a holistic view. Systems means nothing but what we talk in traditional language, holistic approach. Taking the whole together and not only looking at one small symptom. The last point I wanted to mention here is, although the levels of scientific evidence have gone up, you can have piles and piles of research papers in support of one drug. So scientific evidence levels may have gone up, but on the other side, levels of ethics and value systems have gone down. Pharmaceutical industries, even in India, I was ashamed when I read about what Ranbaxy did to all of us. Or major top companies in India today are under scanner of FDA for compromising quality, compromising ethics in their medical research. So, declining values and ethics is one of the major concerns which the world is facing, which again traditions like yours are able to really contribute. And that's why traditional approaches are becoming very, very predominant now. In the West, evolution of science and medicine, and from Hippocrates to William Osler, 400 BC to 20th century, if you really see, you'll get the glimpses of what I just now told you. Until I'm going to skip that because I already have given you this information. So we slowly shifted from acumen to evidence. We lost the connect with the acumen. Today, modern medicine has become so mechanical that doctors have lost that clinical acumen, which used to be a hallmark of clinical practice. They have lost it. Doctors in modern medicine cannot function without pathological laboratory reports and without X-rays or MRIs. They cannot use their clinical acumen for diagnosis. They have lost that skill, which is still retained by traditional practitioners. And all the time we are blaming traditional medicine that they don't have evidence. And I'm going to really, you can stop me in between because I don't want to. Okay, I thought this. Now this picture, I got it from Banaras University. What you see, that's the picture of Nagarjuna. This picture they have put it on the stone in the temple which is there in BHU. BHU there is a temple and there is a museum on the first floor of that temple. And one of the picture is of Nagarjuna. And they have documented this, that using the knowledge which was continued since Nagarjuna, some Vaidya, now I can't read his name here, you see in very small letter, some Vaidya in Banaras, in front of some reputed people, actually did and demonstrated Kimaya, or converting mercury into gold. Documented. So, just saying that what is there in ancient texts has no evidence is not right, because in today's world, you are comparing something which you don't understand. Our approach today to research in traditional medicine is, and we do this very strongly in the government, and because we are doing it for last 5 years at least, and through this journal which I am editor, we are propagating this views that you must remember that traditional knowledge systems and modern science, they have different epistemology. The origin of knowledge is different. Modern medicine is based on Aristotelian logic, which is a reductive logic. And the Eastern logic is based on maybe Sankhya, Buddha, these philosophies, which consider holistic approach. So there is a major difference. While modern science is going to look into atoms and molecules and all, you are going to look at a person as a whole. You are looking at patient as a whole. You are not looking at his only some report or pathological report or no. You may also look into that. But the whole picture is what is more important. So, but what happened was there was stagnation. For any science, whether it is traditional or modern, it has to be. So today, in Ayurveda at least I can tell you that if I ask this question, that are you able to treat diabetes? Out of 100 Vaidyas will tell us, yes, they can treat diabetes. The next question I am going to ask them, that show me the data that you have treated diabetes. They say that no, we are doing it every day. We are treating diabetes. But when you ask them question, that I want to see your 100 patients you have cured with diabetes, then there is deep silence, nothing. Through journals, we are trying to encourage this kind of a case series. I have not come across any such Vaidya who can tell me that here are 100 cases in which I have given medicine in Ayurveda and I have cured them. On the reverse side, I have seen many Ayurvedic Vaidyas who are taking insulin and oral diabetic drugs from modern medicine. They may be giving Ayurvedic drugs to insulin to diabetes patients, but for themselves they are using modern medicine. This is hypocrisy. This is not the way in which traditional medicines have been functioning. And in the process, traditional medicine, ultimately what is modernity? By definition, simple definition of modernity is evolving traditions. If you look at history of modern medicine, what Greek medicine was earlier, traditional Greek medicine became modern medicine because they went with modern science. They combined that with modern science. There was documentation, there was research. So there was some kind of a research stagnancy for a very, very long time in these traditional systems of medicine. And because of this stagnancy, and obviously all these regions were extremely living in challenging conditions. So whether it was Tibet or whether it was India, situation was not different. The priority was to preserve knowledge. Preserving knowledge was priority and not really propagating knowledge. Because if that knowledge would not have been preserved, that knowledge would have been lost. But that phase has gone now. So we should not just remain isolated from the world because the world has moved. Actually, I believe that traditional principles can guide or should guide the research in modern science. And if that happens, if such integration of traditional wisdom and power of science comes, then future medicine will evolve and that will be the real medicine for the world. And we work in a similar area. I'm going to skip some of these because of the time, but in between I have spoken something about this system science, what I told you. Whole and a part relationship, this you can understand better that holistic view from the top is important, but from the top you may not see little birds and little ants also. So holistic view is important, and both whole and part are important. Their relationships are important. We talk about evidence, but evidence is not only something which is generated in laboratory. Evidence is something what you generate every day in your clinical practice because of your experience. So we give a solid foundation for evidence of your experience. Experience is one of the very, very important component of evidence. Observations is another level of evidence. Exploratory research is third level of evidence. And the top level of evidence, which everybody keeps on talking about, is RCT or randomized controlled clinical trial. I am talking about clinical evidence. But today, we are only talking about RCT and we are undermining all these three layers. So, we actually humiliate traditional practitioners, asking them these questions that what is the evidence that your medicine is working? That person is telling you, I have experience, I have observed it works, but because there is no documentation of this experience and this observation, that is not considered as evidence. So as traditional medicine practitioner, I would like to really suggest you that whatever you do in your clinical practice, try to do documentation properly. If you are able to document, if you are able to show with Tibetan medicine, you are able to manage XYZ disease and you come out with thousands of case papers from your center, nobody will ask you randomized clinical control trial.